on the vast plains of the Wild West, where the cold wind howled, across open fields and snowflakes, drifted down like whispers from the heavens. A young woman named Clara struggled to survive another night alone. Her horse had collapsed 3 miles back, her wagon wheel broken, and the few supplies she carried were buried under the relentless snowstorm. She pulled her shawl tighter, her lips trembling, breath turning into clouds of ice as the cruel wind clawed at her face. She had thought she could make it through the mountains alone, thought she was strong, enough to carry herself across the frontier after her father's death. But she was wrong. Out here, the land showed no mercy, and just when Clara thought she would collapse into the white silence and never rise again, the sound of hoofbeats thundered through the storm. Out of the blizzard rode a tall cowboy dressed in a long duster. It pulled low, eyes as sharp as the steel of his revolver. His name was Cole Walker, a man feared and respected across towns, a drifter with a reputation for never staying in one place too long. He pulled up his horse beside her, his voice steady and deep. "You'll freeze out here, ma'am," he said, his tone carrying more command than suggestion. Clara's pride wanted to fight, to say she didn't need saving, but her body betrayed her, shivering so hard she could barely speak. "My horse, supplies, gone," she stammered. Cole dismounted in one smooth motion, wrapping his heavy coat around her trembling shoulders. His gaze lingered on her pale face, lips nearly blue, and without hesitation he added, "If I don't get you to shelter, you won't see sunrise." She blinked back tears, whispering, "I've got nowhere to go." Cole's jaw tightened. He wasn't a man who offered promises lightly, but something in her fragile strength tugged at his guarded heart. "Then you'll come with me," he said firmly. When she hesitated, afraid of owing him more than her life, he added the words that stunned her. "I'll marry you just so you don't freeze. No one will question it. You'll be under my name." "Under my roof safe," Clara gasped, searching his eyes for a trace of jest, but found only the fierce determination of a man who meant every syllable. And before she could respond, before she could protest, his hand cupped her cold cheek and he kissed her, not like a stranger offering comfort, but like a man sealing a vow, fierce and real. The storm roared around them, but in that moment, the world held still. Clara's heart pounded, torn between fear and a heat she had never known. She didn't know this man, yet something in his kiss felt like destiny. Cole pulled back, his breath mingling with hers in the frozen air. "Now let's get you home, Mrs. Walker," he said with a small, knowing smile. And with that, he lifted her into the saddle, swung up behind her, and rode into the night toward a new beginning neither of them had seen coming. The cabin Cole brought her to was sturdy, built with his own hands, standing tall against the snowy hills like a lone sentinel. Clara stepped inside, shivering at the sudden warmth of the fire crackling in the hearth. She clutched his coat tighter, watching as he moved with quiet strength, stoking the flames, setting out food and blankets, as though it was the most natural thing in the world to bring a stranger home and call her wife. But for Clara, nothing about this felt real. She sat by the fire, her mind racing. Who was this man, really? A gunslinger with shadows in his eyes, a wanderer who spoke few words yet carried the weight of 100 untold stories. She studied the scar that traced his jaw, the way his hands, strong and calloused, handled every task with precision. When he finally sat across from her, his gaze caught hers, and she felt the weight of it in her chest. "Why would you say that to me?" she asked softly. "About marrying me. You don't even know me." Cole leaned back in his chair, eyes flickering with firelight. "Out here, names and past don't matter much. Survival does. Folks respect a man's wife. No one questions her place. And you—" He paused, his voice dropping lower. "Rougher. You needed saving." Not pity. Clara's heart clenched. She had lost so much. Her family, her home, her sense of belonging. To hear those words, spoken with such conviction, felt like a lifeline thrown to her sinking soul. Yet fear still lingered. Could she trust him? Could she trust herself when every glance, every brush of his hand sent a storm of feelings she didn't know how to name? The days that followed were a test of fire and ice. Clara learned to cook in his kitchen, mend his shirts by the hearth, and ride with him to town when supplies were needed. Whispers followed them, for Cole Walker was a man of mystery. And Clara, suddenly his wife, was an enigma to all. Some said she was lucky, others pitied her, but none dared to cross her, for the way Cole's hand hovered near his gun told them she was under his fierce protection. Yet Clara soon discovered the layers beneath his steel exterior. At night, when he thought she was asleep, she would catch him staring into the fire, eyes haunted by ghosts of battles and losses untold. Once, when a drunk in town reached for her arm, Cole's wrath was so swift, so merciless, that the man never dared step foot near them again. And afterward, when Clara placed her trembling hand on his arm, whispering his name, he softened, resting his forehead against hers as though her touch anchored him back to the man he wanted to be. But with warmth came danger, for rumors of outlaw gangs spread through the region. Men who knew Cole's name and sought vengeance for old debts. One evening, as the snow began to thaw and spring whispered through the valleys, riders approached their cabin. Cole saw them first, eyes narrowing as he handed Clara his revolver. "Stay inside." No matter what, her heart pounded, fear clawing at her chest. But before she could protest, he kissed her again, hard and desperate, as though it might be their last. "I meant what I said, Clara," he whispered fiercely. "I married you to keep you safe, and I'll fight the devil himself to keep that vow." Then he stepped outside, gun drawn, leaving her trembling in the doorway, torn between obedience and the fire of love growing dangerously strong inside her. The clash that followed was unlike anything Clara had ever witnessed. Gunfire echoed across the valley, the sharp crack of bullets tearing through the night as Cole faced men from his past, outlaws, who carried grudges and greed in equal measure. Clara pressed her back against the cabin wall, clutching the revolver he had given her, every shot outside striking her heart like thunder. She had always feared death, feared losing everything again. But now her greatest fear was losing him. The man who had kissed her like he meant it, who had stood between her and the freezing night without hesitation. When the gunfire paused, Clara's breath caught. Silence was worse than bullets. Then a voice roared outside, mocking, cruel. "Walker! You can't protect her. We'll take her and your land and leave your bones in the snow." Clara's blood ran cold. But before she could stop herself, before fear could root her still, she threw open the door and stepped into the night, revolver in hand. "You'll have to go through me first," she shouted, her voice shaking but strong enough to carry. The outlaws laughed, but Cole's eyes, those fierce, burning eyes, locked on hers, filled with a pride and fear that nearly broke her. "Clara, get back!" he barked, but it was too late. The outlaws moved, guns raising, and Clara fired. The recoil jolted her, but the bullet struck true, grazing one man's arm. The chaos that followed was swift and brutal. Cole fought like a man possessed, his gun steady, his aim deadly. Clara stumbled but stayed by his side, reloading with trembling fingers, refusing to leave him. Together they drove the men back into the night, until the last one fled with curses on his lips. When silence finally settled, broken only by the crackle of the fire and Clara's ragged breathing, Cole turned to her. His hat had fallen, hair plastered to his forehead, blood streaking his arm, but his eyes blazed with something fierce and undeniable. He closed the distance between them in 2 strides, seizing her face in his hands, his voice rough with both fury and love. "You damn fool woman," he growled. "I told you to stay inside." Tears filled Clara's eyes, but she didn't flinch. "And let you die out here alone? I'd rather freeze beside you than live without you." For a long, breathless moment neither spoke. Then Cole crushed his lips against hers, the kiss raw, desperate, unshakably real. It was not the kiss of a man who married her out of necessity. It was the kiss of a man who had found the one person who made him whole. When he finally pulled back, his voice cracked softer now, trembling against the weight of his heart. "I said I'd marry you so you wouldn't freeze, Clara, but truth is..." His thumb brushed her cheek, his forehead resting against hers. "You're the fire that keeps me alive." And in that cabin, with the snow melting and dawn breaking over the mountains, Clara realized she hadn't just been saved from the cold. She had found the one soul who would fight for her, bleed for her, and love her until the end of time. Their marriage had begun as a vow of survival, but it had become something greater, something eternal. And from that day forward, Cole Walker and Clara were no longer 2 broken souls surviving. The wilderness, they were one, bound by love, forged in the fire of storms, and sealed with a kiss that meant everything. And that, dear listeners, is the powerful tale of how a cowboy's vow to save a woman from the cold turned into a love fierce enough to fight storms and outlaws alike. If this story touched your heart, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more. Wild West love stories that will keep you hooked till the very last word. Mom.